Hi everyone, today I'm covering campers and hikers who ignored every warning sign they were given and paid for it overnight. From a group of friends who walked toward a black bear just to get a photo, to a botanist in the Alaskan backcountry who never even heard the animal coming. But first, we start in western Montana, where a park ranger gave two campers a clear warning about a grizzly, and they decided to ignore it completely. On June 11, 2017, in western Montana, a quiet river valley lay beneath a clear summer sky. A small campground beside the water felt like the safest place on earth. That evening, Thomas and Linda Reed pulled their travel trailer into a secluded campsite they had chosen for its silence, unaware that a hungry visitor had already passed through the campground twice before they arrived. Thomas was 54 years old, a retired high school history teacher. Linda was 52, working part-time as a librarian. They had been married for 28 years and spent almost every summer of that marriage exploring national forests in their small trailer. Friends described them as careful people who liked fishing and reading in the evenings, not thrill seekers chasing danger. When they checked in at the campground office that afternoon, a ranger gave every guest the same warning. A large grizzly had entered campsites the previous 2 nights, drawn in by food left out in the open. Campers were told to use the steel food lockers scattered around the grounds, store every scented item properly, and never leave food, garbage, or cooking grease outside overnight. Several families packed up within the hour and left for a different campground entirely. Thomas brushed the warning off. Decades of camping had taught him that bears usually kept their distance, and he figured one more night without perfect discipline would not matter. After grilling steaks for dinner, the couple left a tray of grease sitting outside on the picnic table, stored their cooler underneath instead of locking it away, and left a full garbage bag beside the trailer to deal with in the morning. When I read that a park ranger told them a bear had already been in that campground 2 nights in a row, I just couldn't believe my eyes. How does anyone hear that warning and still leave food out overnight? I would have been packing up my trailer and leaving that place immediately. The idea of ignoring such a clear danger is something I will never understand. The grizzly bear, an adult male estimated at roughly 500 pounds, is one of the most powerful land animals in North America. Capable of detecting food from remarkable distances when wind conditions are favorable, it does not need to see a target to find it. It only needs a strong enough trail of smell, and grease left sitting out overnight is about as strong a trail as it gets in bear country. Just after midnight, the bear returned, moving quietly along the same path it had used the 2 nights before. It tore into the trash bag first, then ripped open the unsecured cooler beneath the table. The noise woke Thomas, and he assumed it was nothing more than a raccoon or a deer. He opened the trailer door without switching on a single exterior light, stepping halfway out to look. The bear's attention had been on the food outside the trailer. The open door and Thomas's sudden appearance shifted its focus. The bear quickly turned toward the doorway. Startled by the sudden movement only a few feet away, it rushed at Thomas before he could move away, hitting him with full force, knocking him backward, and biting down hard on his shoulder as he tried to twist away. Linda screamed from inside and grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the doorway. As Thomas fell backward into the doorway and Linda pulled him inside, the bear followed the movement through the open entrance. With the attack already underway, it forced its way into the trailer after him. That small space, meant to be their shelter for the night, became the one place they could not escape from. The bear kept biting and clawing both of them at close range, knocking over gear as it moved. By morning, another camper noticed the wrecked site and alerted park staff. Rangers found both Thomas and Linda dead inside the trailer. The county medical examiner later listed the cause of death for both as blood loss and traumatic injury from a bear attack. Investigators said this began as a simple case of a bear getting used to human food, one of the most common reasons bears become dangerous around people. The bear had not gone there planning to hunt the reeds. The bear came looking for food that should have been locked away hours earlier. When Thomas unexpectedly stepped into the bear's feeding area, the close-range encounter escalated into a violent attack within seconds. Thomas had been camping for 30 years and thought that made him safe. I understand why he felt confident. I really do. But I also know that experience without caution is just luck waiting to run out. The bear didn't care about his years of camping. It only cared about the food they left out and the door that opened in its face. The bear that night was not chasing anyone through the woods. It already had a meal waiting right outside the door. The next story is nothing like that. There is no food left out and no warning ignored the night before it happens. Instead, a warning is spoken out loud, right at the edge of a forest trail, and a group of friends decide a photograph is worth walking closer anyway. October 3rd, 2016. West Milford, New Jersey. A quiet Sunday afternoon settled over a patch of oak and hemlock forest wedged between suburban neighborhoods. That was the afternoon Deepak Chopra and 5 college friends walked past a spoken warning that should have sent all 6 of them straight back to their cars. Deepak was 25 years old, a senior studying information technology at Rutgers University. Raised in a suburban New Jersey neighborhood, he loved organizing weekend outdoor trips for his close circle of friends, even though none of them, including Deepak himself, had much real experience hiking through actual woods. This trip was supposed to be nothing more than a simple, relaxing walk to unwind from university exams, a few hours outside before the semester picked back up. The group drove out together to the Apshua Preserve, a wooded area covering approximately 576 acres of oak and hemlock forest, for a casual afternoon trail walk with no real plan beyond enjoying the fall weather. Near the entrance to the preserve, a couple walking in the opposite direction stopped the group on the trail and warned them that a black bear had been spotted nearby only a short while earlier. They urged the group to turn back and try a different trail instead. Deepak and his friends thanked the couple, kept walking anyway, and the warning was pretty much forgotten within a few minutes. I cannot believe that a couple at the trailhead actually warned them about a bear nearby, and they just walked in anyway.
If a stranger tells me there is a danger ahead, I listen to them. I don't just ignore the warning and keep going like nothing happened. That decision to push forward is something I just don't get.
About 100 yards off the main trail, the group spotted the bear themselves, an animal weighing close to 300 pounds, moving slowly through the underbrush. Instead of slowly backing away while speaking calmly, which is exactly what any experienced guide would have told them to do, the group moved closer to get better photos. I have seen this exact decision made by so many different people in so many different places, and it never stops being frustrating to watch. Because a wild animal standing in front of you is not a prop for your camera roll. It is a living, unpredictable creature that can close distance far faster than anyone standing there ever expects. The black bear had become used to finding food and garbage from nearby neighborhoods. Instead of walking away, it began following the group through the trees. Black bears sometimes huff, jaw pop, or even bluff charge before becoming aggressive, but they do not always give obvious warning signs. A bear that feels threatened, cornered, or reacts to someone running away can suddenly shift from watching to pursuing with little warning, closing the distance far faster than most people expect. As the bear moved steadily closer, the group panicked and scattered in 6 different directions through the brush, which is close to the worst possible reaction anyone could have chosen at that moment. Sudden fleeing movement is exactly the trigger that activates a chase instinct in most predators. Bears are very much included, and this is the exact point where a bad decision turned into a fatal one. The bear locked onto Deepak, the isolated runner cutting alone through dense brush while his friends scattered off in other directions. There was no roar, no warning swipe, no pause of any kind to reconsider, only a silent, committed pursuit that ended with the bear knocking him hard to the ground almost immediately. It bit into his shoulders and upper back within seconds of catching him. Deepak tried to fight back using only his hands, but without bear spray or any kind of weapon, he was quickly overwhelmed as the bear continued biting at his head and neck. When the group finally regrouped near the trailhead and realized Deepak was nowhere to be found, they called emergency services right away. Search and rescue teams located his body roughly 2 hours later inside a secluded wooded ravine, with the bear still remaining close to the body. Officers found the bear remaining close to the body and behaving aggressively toward rescuers. Because it refused to leave the area, police shot the animal. Deepak never ran toward danger that afternoon. He ran because 5 other people around him started running first, and the bear focused on the isolated runner and quickly closed the distance before anyone understood what was already happening. I have learned that running from a black bear is the worst thing you can possibly do. It triggers their chase instinct and makes them treat you like prey.
Deepak was the unlucky one the bear picked, and I keep thinking about how he never had a chance once he started running.
The next story trades a quiet suburban forest for the middle of a massive industrial worksite, where fences, gravel roads, and heavy machinery gave one woman a false sense that nothing wild could ever reach her there. It was May 17th, 2017. In Fort McMurray, Alberta, thick forests surrounded a massive industrial oil site where gravel roads and tall fences made the entire area feel cut off from the wilderness on every side. That false sense of security is exactly what walked Natalie Pierce into danger on what should have been just another normal shift. Natalie was 39 years old, an instrument technician working at a small water treatment building inside the industrial site. Originally from Ireland, she was known by her coworkers for being extremely careful about safety and for her warm, easygoing sense of humor during long shifts. Animals were seen around the site fairly often because of the forest nearby, but company rules said all trash had to be kept sealed up tight so nothing wild would get pulled in close to the work areas. She was working at a huge site with massive machines, gravel roads, and tall fences all around her every single day.
It makes total sense that she felt safe there, but fences and machines mean nothing to a hungry bear. The forest was right there the whole time, and somehow a bear still found its way in.
During a normal walk back from a break room to her work area, Natalie moved alone through a narrow, half-enclosed path lined with gravel and heavy machines. She carried no bear spray with her that day, trusting that the noise from the machines and the tall fences around the site would keep any dangerous animal far away.
What she did not know was that a large, starving male black bear had slipped through an open gate somewhere along the fence line, looking for any easy food it could find.
She was walking without bear spray because she thought the industrial site was secure. I feel so frustrated every time I read about someone in bear country without spray. You cannot reason with a bear or scare it away with your voice. That can of spray is your only voice, and she didn't have one. That mistake cost her everything. The American black bear usually stays away from people and hides in the forest whenever it can. But hunger changes everything for a bear like that. A starving bear, especially one that already knows there might be food near a work site, will take much bigger risks getting close to a person than a healthy, well-fed bear ever would. As Natalie came around a blind corner, she walked straight into the bear with almost no space between them. This is the moment that changed everything. The bear froze for a brief moment. Then, instead of retreating, it lunged at her and dragged her toward the trees at the edge of the clearing. Her coworkers heard her screaming and ran toward the sound right away. They threw rocks at the bear, blasted air horns as loud as they could, and even drove heavy trucks straight at it, trying everything they could think of to make it stop. None of it worked. A defensive bear will often retreat once it has an escape route or enough distance from the threat. This one didn't, which suggested to the rescuers that something much worse was happening. The bear wasn't defending itself, it was hunting. When I read that her coworkers threw rocks and blasted horns and even drove heavy vehicles at that bear, my stomach dropped, and the bear still would not let go of her. A scared, defensive bear would have run away from all that noise, but this one held on because it was hunting, not defending. That level of determination is absolutely chilling to me. The bear kept dragging her further away toward the tree line and further from the buildings and the people trying to save her. Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers reached the site soon after and had to shoot and kill the bear right there. Paramedics tried to save Natalie, but she had already lost too much blood from injuries to her torso and neck by the time help reached her. She died at the scene. The attack prompted many industrial sites across Western Canada to strengthen bear safety procedures. I think about that a lot. Her death forced them to take bear safety seriously, and now workers carry spray and get proper training. It doesn't bring her back, and I know that. But knowing that others are safer because of her gives me some small sense of meaning in this tragedy. Fences, gravel roads, and the constant sound of heavy machines made everyone feel safe, even though the forest around them never was. The next story leaves those machines behind and heads into the mountains outside Yellowstone, where one experienced guide walked over a ridge and straight into a grizzly bear feeding on its meal. March 28th, 2020. Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness, Montana. Cold wind cuts hard across steep, brushy land just outside Yellowstone National Park, the kind of early spring landscape that looks completely empty right up until the moment it is not. That was the land Travis Boone chose to hike through alone that day, looking for shed elk antlers scattered across the hillsides. Travis was 45 years old, a veteran outdoor guide, a father of 3, and a very experienced woodsman living in Livingston, Montana. He knew the backcountry around Yellowstone better than almost anyone in his community and had built a strong, local name for his survival skills over many years.
She's hunting means walking far off any marked trail through steep, brushy draws, often completely alone. And Travis had done exactly that for years, without a single serious problem.
Early spring in the greater Yellowstone area is when the first large male grizzlies begin emerging from their winter dens, extremely hungry and searching for animals that died during the cold months. Travis was hiking alone that day with a strong wind blowing straight into his face, which kept his smell from traveling ahead of him toward anything hiding in the draws below.
I keep thinking about how that one weather detail changed everything.
If the wind had been blowing the other way, the bear might have caught his scent sooner and moved off before he ever reached the draw. But the wind betrayed him, and he walked right into danger without the bear having any warning at all. Bad luck like that scares me, because you cannot control it. To move light and cover ground faster, Travis had left his bear spray behind in his truck, believing the chances of encountering an active grizzly were still low. That one choice is hard to read about for me, because leaving bear spray behind in grizzly country during the time bears begin emerging from their dens took away his best chance of stopping or discouraging a charging bear. The can of bear spray stayed in his truck while he continued deeper into the backcountry without it. The grizzly bear is the largest land predator in that part of Montana, and a male grizzly guarding food behaves nothing like a curious or startled animal just passing through the woods. It commits fully, using its huge body and jaw strength to remove anything it sees as a threat to its meal. This bear was not out hunting Travis that day. It was guarding a carcass it had found after months without eating. And that kind of hungry, defensive grizzly is one of the most dangerous things a person can walk into by accident. Travis reached the top of a steep ridge and walked directly onto a large male grizzly feeding on an old elk carcass hidden in a shallow draw just below him, with almost no space between them. Startled at extremely close range while defending food it desperately needed, the grizzly reacted instantly. It rose up for less than a second, then dropped down and charged straight at him, closing the distance in well under 3 seconds, at speeds faster than 30 miles per hour. Travis had no time to raise his arms, reach for anything, or even take a full step back. The bear hit him with its full weight, driving him backward and down the slope. It bit down hard on his shoulder and upper back, then used its front paws to hold him in place as it continued biting. Travis tried to fight back, but there was no real way to push back against an animal that size at that range. The attack lasted only a short time before the bear backed off the body and returned its attention to the carcass it had been protecting the whole time, treating the threat as gone and going back to feeding nearby. When Travis failed to come home by nightfall, his worried family called local authorities right away, starting a large search and rescue effort with helicopters and specially trained dogs. 2 full days later, tired search teams finally found his body in a remote drainage far from any trail. The medical examiner determined he died from blunt force injuries and bite wounds sustained during the bear attack.
It took search and rescue teams 2 full days to find his body. I cannot imagine what his family went through during those 2 days of waiting and hoping.
He went out in the morning and never came home, and nobody knew exactly where he was. That vast wilderness, those helicopters flying over, those dogs searching through the brush while his family waited in agony. That whole scene stays with me and makes me feel so sad. Travis was alone that whole time, which meant there was nobody nearby to make noise, warn the bear, or go for help the second something went wrong. Hiking solo through grizzly country is a gamble, and in a case like this, it is a gamble that rarely ends well. The next story trades a steep mountain ridge for a quiet lake cabin late at night, where barking dogs on a porch turned out to be the only warning anyone would ever get. August 28th, 2021, Rainy Lake, right on the border between the United States and Canada. A quiet Sunday evening settled over a small, remote island where people rarely worried about big animals reaching them at all, since water surrounded the whole property on every side. That feeling of being safe on an island is exactly what led Alicia Morgan to step outside without a second thought that night. Alicia was 59 years old, an artist and retiree from Maple Plain, Minnesota. She spent her summers at her family's small cabin on the island, far away from any real city noise or crowds. She loved painting the lake at sunset and often sat on the porch in the evening sketching the water while her 2 small dogs wandered around nearby. The island was small, only a short boat ride from the mainland, and seeing a big animal there was thought to be so rare that most people who stayed there never gave it much thought at all. Her family had owned the cabin for years and treated the island as one of the safest places they knew, a spot where the biggest worry was usually just bad weather rolling in off the lake. On this particular evening, her 2 small dogs were outside on the porch while she stayed inside painting, feeling completely relaxed and at ease. Her Her elderly mother was also in the cabin that night, sitting in the next room reading. Nothing about the evening felt different from any other night they had spent there that summer. When the dogs suddenly started barking like crazy into the dark, Alicia got up and walked outside to check on them, leaving the cabin door open loosely behind her without even thinking about it. She figured the dogs were probably just barking at a passing boat, or maybe a raccoon somewhere close by in the bushes, the kind of thing that had happened plenty of times before without any real trouble. I've stepped outside to check on barking dogs more times than I can count, and I never once thought twice about it.
Reading this makes me realize how much we all assume the dark outside of our own door is safe just because it has always been before.
The American black bear is usually a careful animal that tries to stay away from people whenever it can. But an old bear in bad shape, especially one with worn down teeth that make it hard to eat normal food, will take much bigger risks to get an easy meal than a healthy bear ever would. This particular bear had swum across open water to reach the island. Later examination showed it was old, severely underweight, and had badly worn teeth, conditions that likely pushed it to take risks a healthy bear normally would not. Bothered by the nonstop barking, the bear had been quietly hanging around near the cabin steps. Whether it had been investigating food odors or simply passing through, when Alicia stepped straight into the darkness, she surprised it at extremely close range with absolutely no warning.
This is the exact moment everything changed.
Driven by desperation, the bear lunged up onto the porch and knocked her down hard before she even had a real chance to turn around and get back through the open door. The one thing that could have kept her safe that whole night. Once she was on the ground, the bear did not back off. It bit down on her arm and shoulder as she tried to push herself away from the porch steps. After knocking her to the ground, the bear continued biting and clawing her in short, violent bursts. The attack happened almost completely in silence, since there was no growling or warning sound before any of it started. Just barking dogs, and then sudden, close-range violence in the dark that lasted only a couple of minutes before everything went still. Alicia's elderly mother, who was still inside the cabin the whole time, heard the sudden noise outside and called the local police right away for help. Ontario provincial police officers arrived by boat roughly 40 minutes later and found Alicia's body near the cabin steps, with the starving bear still standing close by and refusing to leave the area.
Because the bear remained close to the victim and showed no sign of retreating as officers approached, they shot and killed it at the scene.
She stepped outside into total darkness with no flashlight of any kind. She could not see the bear clearly, and the bear could not see her clearly either. And that sudden surprise at such close range is really what ended up costing her her life. One simple step out into the dark was all it took, and that thought alone is enough to make anyone feel uneasy for a long time. The next story moves deep into the Alaskan backcountry, where thick brush and a loud rushing stream hid an approaching predator completely, leaving almost no time for anyone to react once it finally showed itself. May 31st, 2015, interior Alaska, near a remote mining camp that could only be reached by helicopter. Thick alder bushes and a fast-moving mountain stream filled the whole valley with steady background noise, covering up almost every small sound moving through the brush nearby. That constant noise is exactly what worked against Nora Whitmore on what was supposed to be a normal day of field work. Nora was 29 years old, a contract botanist and environmental worker from Anchorage, Alaska. She spent her summers collecting basic environmental data across remote parts of the state that had no roads at all, work that often meant days at a time in areas far from any real help. She was an experienced hiker who genuinely respected wildlife and normally followed strict safety habits without skipping steps, the kind of person coworkers trusted to make smart calls out in the field. On this trip, she had been flown by helicopter into a roadless valley, along with a coworker to gather soil and plant samples across a set of marked research areas, part of a larger project studying the land near the mining camp. The morning had started out completely ordinary. The two of them had been dropped off early, and their plan was simple: walk a set path through the brush, collect samples at each marked point, and meet back at a central spot before the helicopter returned later that day. Nothing about the morning felt unusual or risky in any way. While working through the thick alder brush, Nora and her coworker spread out a little to cover more ground faster. The thick plants, combined with wind moving through the bushes and the steady sound of the nearby stream, covered up almost anything moving close by without either of them noticing. Nora had bear spray with her that day, but it was tucked into a side pocket of her backpack instead of carried in a chest or belt holster, making it much slower to reach if something happened suddenly.
It is easy to look back and say she should have kept it closer, but a choice like that feels completely reasonable right up until the moment it matters most.
I honestly cannot say I would have done it differently in her place. But it is only in those 2 or 3 seconds before an attack that I realized the difference between spray on my chest and spray buried in a backpack pocket is really the difference between having a chance and having none at all. American black bears usually avoid people altogether, and often leave as soon as they become aware of someone nearby. When a bear is acting defensively, it may huff, pop its jaws, bluff charge, or swat the ground before making contact. A bear hunting a person behaves very differently. It often moves quietly through cover without obvious warning, closing the distance before the victim realizes it is nearby. Those rare predatory attacks can unfold with very little time to react. A grown, male black bear came out of the thicket directly behind her without making a single sound and charged from less than 15 feet away, leaving her almost no time to react at all. This is the moment where everything changed for her. Nora managed to shout out to her partner right before the bear reached her, and he sprinted over immediately with the bear spray already in his hand, covering the distance between them as fast as he possibly could. He reached her only seconds later and sprayed the bear directly in the face at close range, doing exactly what he had been trained to do in that kind of emergency. Even that was not enough to stop it. The bear stayed locked onto the attack, biting and clawing at her for several more seconds before it finally let go and backed off into the thick brush. By the time it retreated, her injuries were already far too severe to survive, despite everything her partner had done to try to save her.
Her partner did everything a person is supposed to do in that exact moment. Spray already in his hand, running straight toward the danger instead of away from it, and it still was not enough to change what happened next.
That kind of outcome is hard to sit with me because sometimes doing everything right still is not enough to stop a predator that has already fully committed to an attack, and that thought alone makes this story feel especially unfair. Her co-worker managed to reach a nearby radio relay station soon after and called in for an emergency evacuation, giving rescuers her exact location as best he could. Search and rescue teams responded as quickly as possible, but the remote location and rough terrain meant help could not arrive in time. Tracking teams found the bear several hours later, still in the same general area, and made the decision to destroy it after confirming it had not moved far from the attack site. Nora died from her injuries before any medical help was able to reach her. That complete silence before the bear ever appeared is the detail from this story that stays with me the longest. There was no growl, no warning sound, nothing at all to hear until the bear was already right on top of her. A stream that loud and brush that thick can hide almost anything. And that is a hard thing to fully accept once you really think about how little warning she actually had that morning, out in a place where help was hours away no matter what happened.